All right. Welcome into Toilets and Titles on the Clock, NFL Draft Show. This is episode number 15. This evening, I, Coach Sheps, am completing the second round of the 2023 NFL Draft. My team and I, so I had Nino, KT, Shane Hallam, Oliver Hodgkinson. We worked together to complete the first round, and now we figured, you know what? It's 1 week until the NFL Draft. Let's dive a little bit deeper. Let's get into the second round. So before we get into the second round, I do want to let everybody know, whoever you're listening to this, be greatly appreciated if you threw us a subscribe, hit the like button, threw us some comments. Go check out our sister network, the CFB Nation. They are constantly grinding. I know that Nino was at the Brown spring game today. Tomorrow, Nino is going out to Syracuse. KT's getting busy. Jared, D-Now, the whole crew's getting busy. So you want to check them out as well. If you have Apple Podcasts, though, as a 5-star Apple review, that's always greatly appreciated. And with the draft 1 week away, if you're just now starting to dive in, if there's some names you're not quite sure about and you want to get a little more information, go to toiletstotitles.com, navigate yourself to the NFL Draft tab. Underneath the NFL Draft tab, you'll see our big board, our player profiles, our positional rankings, and then, man, have a good time. Check it out and find a little bit out about all these players, what we think about them, and that might help you make your own analysis for what you think and what to expect for your team going into the NFL Draft. If you want to support the show, patreon.com/toiletstotitles. And like I said earlier, just throwing us a subscribe, like, or comment. That supports the show more than you know. It helps the algorithm, helps us lift us to the top. I see Joe Clark in here. D-Now, I appreciate you, fellas. Joe is representing the New York Giants. D-Now is representing the Detroit Lions. And I'm going to do my best to make you proud, all right? I know I drafted for the Detroit Lions in the first round. And, Joe, I'm not sure who drafted for the Giants, but I'm going to do my best. I know the Giants really like those short, shifty wide receivers. So I'll try to find you one of those short, shifty wide receivers that you have about 6 of on your depth chart. All right. Why don't I recap the first round before I get into the second round here? To start things off, all right, I'm just going to go through this quickly because once I get into every pick of the second round, I'm also going to mention who these teams previously picked. And you could also go if you want. If you're not watching this live, go to Toilets and Titles on YouTube, check out On the Clock, and you can watch the last 3 episodes to see. The first episode was top 10 picks, and then like 11 through 20, and then like 21 through 32. So you can go back and check all those out, or you can just listen to me now. So Carolina Panthers took C.J. Stroud. Houston Texans took Bryce Young. Arizona Cardinals took Tyree Wilson. Indianapolis Colts took Will Anderson. Seattle Seahawks took Jalen Carter. Detroit Lions took Lucas Van Ness. Las Vegas Raiders took Christian Gonzalez. Atlanta Falcons took Will Levis. Chicago Bears took Broderick Jones. Philadelphia Eagles took Devon Witherspoon. Tennessee Titans took Paris Johnson Jr. The Houston Texans took Jackson Smith and Jigba. New York Jets took Darnell Wright, offensive tackle out of Tennessee. New England Patriots took Peter Skoronski, offensive lineman out of Northwestern. The Green Bay Packers took Brian Branch, DB out of Alabama. Washington Commanders took Anthony Richardson, quarterback out of Florida. And King Cash, I see you in here. Hope you're having a good night, bro. Yes, sir. 1 week to the draft. I am super excited. Have a good evening. Tomorrow night, me and my son Emmett, so I'll be covering Army football this season, and go check out my show, The Armory, on CFB Nation. Tomorrow we're going to the spring game. Emmett's coming up. He's got media credentials too, so he'll be holding the camera for me. So I'm having a good night. Tomorrow night will be a good night, and then the draft will be here before you know it. But anyway, the Washington Commanders took Anthony Richardson, like I mentioned. Steelers took Joey Porter Jr. out of Penn State. Detroit Lions took Deonte Banks, cornerback out of Maryland. Tampa Bay Buccaneers, I don't know why I said it like that. Buccaneers took Hendon Hooker, quarterback out of Tennessee. Seattle Seahawks took John Michael Schmitz, interior offensive lineman out of Minnesota. Los Angeles Chargers took Jordan Addison, wide receiver out of USC. Baltimore Ravens took Nolan Smith, edge out of Georgia. Minnesota Vikings took Bijan Robinson, running back out of Texas. Jacksonville Jaguars took Cam Smith, corner out of South Carolina. New York Giants took Macy Smith, interior defensive lineman out of Michigan. Dallas Cowboys took Drew Sanders, the linebacker out of Arkansas. Buffalo Bills took Osiris Torrance, the offensive guard out of Florida. Cincinnati Bengals took Dalton Kincaid, the tight end out of Utah. New Orleans Saints took Zay Flowers, wide receiver out of Boston College. Philadelphia Eagles took Miles Murphy, the edge out of Clemson. And finally, the Kansas City Chiefs took Josh Downs, the wide receiver out of North Carolina. So that would be it for the first round. The night would end, and then the day would start, and boom, here we are. It is round 2. It is time to kick this thing off. On the clock to start day 2, Pittsburgh Steelers. What I think of when I think of the Pittsburgh Steelers is they know how to find wide receivers. And right now they got a few wide receivers. They just traded for Allen Robinson. So they got Deontay Johnson. They got George Pickens, who's an absolute stud. They got a running game. Their offensive line could use some work, but I think their defense is usually their calling card. And outside of TJ Watt, hasn't really been phenomenal. I think they got Minka Fitzpatrick as well. So they have some ball players over there, but they bring in Joey Porter Jr. I'm giving them Jack Campbell, linebacker out of Iowa. I think that's a great fit for Pittsburgh. And I could already hear Nino right now screaming, "Oh, no, no, it should be Trenton Simpson," because he was kind of doing the same thing when I took Drew Sanders. But Nino, that leads me to fate. Fate giving Houston Texans and the D'Amico Ryans Trenton Simpson. So I got the Pittsburgh Steelers taking Jack Campbell out of Iowa. Then I got the Houston Texans who took Bryce Young and Jackson Smith-Njigba in the first round. Now D'Amico Ryans is going to be able to get his first defensive player as the new head coach. They need a linebacker. So I got Trenton Simpson going to Houston Texans. So we got back-to-back middle linebackers. Rich, I see you in here, my guy. What's happened? It is nice to see you. Glad you are safe. I know you've been chasing tornadoes the last few days, so man, stay safe. Don't go chasing tornadoes, all right? All right, the Arizona Cardinals are on the clock. First round selection was Tyree Wilson, the edge out of Texas Tech. He's an absolute monster, huge physical specimen. And the Arizona Cardinals, there's another huge physical specimen available. They need a wide receiver. They need a corner. What's up, Moon? Nice to see you, my guy. I hope you're doing well. I know you're busy too. I know you're grinding. Moon is another member of CFB Nation. And I believe he was down at Georgia Tech for their spring game. So these guys are globe trotting right now. It's hard to get them all in one place because they just do not stop. All right. Arizona Cardinals, like I said, they took Tyree Wilson. There's another big physical specimen available, and that's Quentin Johnson. Quentin Johnson fell all the way to the second round. I don't like him as a first rounder, but as a second rounder, sign me up. So Arizona Cardinals, deep field stretcher, physical dude. I like it. And I see King Cash in here and Rich talking about Cedric Tillman. Are we overlooking Cedric Tillman? I don't know. We might get to him in a little bit. All right. Indianapolis Colts are on the clock for the fourth selection. Rich is saying he likes Cedric Tillman more than he likes Quentin Johnson. Okay. All right. I don't hate you for that. That is it's not a terrible take. I'll give you that much. All right. So Joe says he loves Cedric Tillman too. So there's a lot of Cedric Tillman love. So you guys better all be cheering if he goes in the second round. That's foreshadowing. All right. Fourth pick in the second round, Indianapolis Colts. Their first selection was Will Anderson. I remember I took this pick. Quarterbacks were still available. I just couldn't pass on Will Anderson. I felt like this dude is an absolute stud. And you can't pass up possibly the best player in the draft. So they still need offensive guard. They still need corner. I know they moved on from Stephon Gilmore. So I was thinking Steve Avila, Keely Ringo, Cody Mock, but ultimately I landed on Emmanuel Forbes for the Indianapolis Colts out of Mississippi State. He's a little undersized, a little is an understatement for a player who's undersized, about 165 pounds. But regardless of size, he's in most people's top 5 corners. And the fact that he fell to the second, he was a consensus first rounder, like before the combine and kind of the weigh-in and the pro day cycle. So he fell to the end of, to the early second. I think Will Anderson and Emmanuel Forbes, that defense now with DeForest Buckner, they got some good young linebackers there. I know Darius Leonard is a little banged up, but they've seemed to be fine at the linebacker position without him. So I think they're going to be all right. You bring in a guy like that, and that's a good way to help restock that defense. So the Los Angeles Rams, they would be on the clock next. And their first round selection, none, because they said F them picks. But now all of a sudden they are trying to get some picks. So they need edge. They need offensive linemen. There's an edge available. BJ Ojolari, LSU. LA Rams run a 3-4. I think Ojolari can play it. He's okay dropping in coverage. He is a very high upside edge defender. Usually you can't really get high upside edge defenders like that at this point in the draft, and the Los Angeles Rams were able to do that. So next, Seattle Seahawks, their first round selections, they got Jalen Carter. They also got John Michael Schmitz. So the interior of their team is being built. They still need edge. They still need wide receiver. I'm going Jalen Hyatt. All right. I know they got DK Metcalf who can fly, and he's a vertical guy. He was dubbed a one-trick pony coming out of college. And Jalen Hyatt, okay, they're not similar body types, but just similar in their route tree. Okay, they just run and go get it, run and go get it. Now you can be able to have another guy like that. it's going to be a little tricky because, they still got Tyler Lockett, but Tyler Lockett can play outside. He's not going to be there forever. Jalen Hyatt, you're going to have to put in the slot. And they kind of went after a guy like this, the kid out of Western Michigan. I can't think of his name, Dwayne Eskridge, a few years ago. And I think they were looking for that type. I think they missed a little bit with Dwayne Eskridge. And I think Jalen Hyatt is what they were hoping Dwayne Eskridge would be. So give me Jalen Hyatt to the Seattle Seahawks. And then the Las Vegas Raiders. So, Rich, I see you in here, my guy. All right, so hold your breath. Their first round selection was Christian Gonzalez. I know you love that. They still need edge. They need somebody who can help Max Crosby get to the quarterback. The edge I am giving to the Las Vegas Raiders is Felix Anudike-Uzomah out of Kansas State, another freak. All right, this dude can get to the quarterback, high ceiling player. And I think being able to learn from a guy like Max Crosby will be good. So he said I had to rank my yes. Love that. So Rich loves it. Felix Anudike-Uzomah to the Las Vegas Raiders. All right, let's move on to the Carolina Panthers. Their first round selection was quarterback CJ Stroud. They need linebacker. They need tight end. They need wide receiver. Unfortunately for them, Trenton Simpson's gone. Jack Campbell's gone. Jalen Hyatt, Quentin Johnson. So the wide receivers, we could go Cedric Tillman. And maybe I would have if the love I knew was so high for him earlier. But I'm going to go Michael Mayer. I think Michael Mayer is the most well-rounded tight end prospect in this class. Dalton Kincaid was the only tight end to go, and he went in the first round. So Michael Mayer is second off the board. You got a young quarterback like CJ Stroud. Michael Mayer is going to help the run game. He can get open. He's a phenomenal receiving target. He's a phenomenal blocker. He's more explosive than people give him credit for. So I'm going to go with Michael Mayer. And then New Orleans Saints are next on the clock. And their first round selection, I don't have it written down here. Did they have? Oh, they took Zay Flowers. Okay. So the New Orleans Saints, they took Zay Flowers in the first round out of Boston College. Okay. Now their team needs defensive end, wide receiver, running back. So my options, I was thinking for them too: Cedric Tillman, Will McDonald, and Keion White. I'm going to go with Keion White. Keion White's a big fella. He's a good pass rusher. Cameron Jordan ain't going to be around forever, and I think Keion White can come in there in New Orleans and eventually take over for him. And then I see Jared in here. Nice to see you, my guy. Yes, we are rolling. We're about a third to a quarter of the way through the second round. So now let's move on. We got the Tennessee Titans on the clock. Okay, they went Paris Johnson Jr., offensive tackle at Ohio State. They need wide receivers still. They need defensive back. They need help. Okay, they need a pass catcher, in my opinion. I know that their coach, Mike Vrabel, was probably hoping that Michael Mayer fell to them. Michael Mayer went 2 picks earlier. I was thinking Luke Musgrave. I was thinking Tyler Scott. But I am going to give them Luke Musgrave because Luke Musgrave, he's a freak. He's phenomenal after the catch, and he's just a playmaker. And they need as many playmakers as they can get because they are in trouble, especially if they move on with Derrick Henry. So Treylon Burks, he can't do, he proved he can't do everything himself. He needs some help. He needs to develop. I think Luke Musgrave at this point in the draft is the best target available. So the Tennessee Titans, they're going to go out. They're going to select Luke Musgrave. So now they got Paris Johnson, Luke Musgrave, Treylon Burks. So they're starting to kind of rebuild and retool that offense. I know they just locked up Jeffrey Simmons long-term, so the defense can use some help. I mean, they just could use some help everywhere. But I think at this point, Luke Musgrave is the selection I'm going with for them. Now, the Jets have back-to-back picks, okay? In the first round, the Jets went Darnell Wright, offensive tackle out of Tennessee, who also has some flexibility. He could slide inside, okay? So he can play guard, he could play tackle, but the Jets, the interior of their team could use some help. I know they got Quinnen Williams, who's a penetrator who could stop the run, but I'm going to give them Keanu Benton, DT out of Wisconsin, to play next to Quinnen Williams. And I think he'll make Quinnen Williams' job easier, and I think he'll help keep some linebackers clean so they could fly around and make plays in the football. And then I'm going to continue to build the interior of that team. So next selection, okay, so the Jets already took Darnell Wright in the first round. Then you got Keanu Benton. I'm going to add some meat to this team. I'm going with Joe Tippmann, the center out of Wisconsin. And I think the Jets got meaner. Between Wright, Benton, Tippmann, they got meaner, they got more physical, and you win in the trenches. And then if they go out and get a guy like Aaron Rodgers, score them some points, and they can win in the trenches with a guy like Aaron Rodgers, I think this is all good stuff for the New York Jets. So after that, the Atlanta Falcons are on the clock. They took Will Levis, the quarterback out of Kentucky, in the first round. They still have needs at the edge, offensive line, corner. Will McDonald's still on the board. Okay. And I believe, Keon White's off the board, so he's gone. Cody Mauch is available. So is Keely Ringo. And I'm going to keep Keely Ringo in Georgia with the Atlanta Falcons. We're going to put him outside. All right. So Will Levis, they're staying in the SEC, the Atlanta Falcons. Will Levis, Keely Ringo, they're a little biased. All right. They're a little SEC biased. So go ahead and draft me Keely Ringo for the Atlanta Falcons. And then the Green Bay Packers are on the clock right now. Their first round selection is Brian Branch, who I think one of the best players in this draft. I think he's a can't miss guy. He can play all over the place, and he is such a sure and sound tackler that he just makes any team he's on better. And he happens to be on the Green Bay Packers in this practice we're doing here. They still have needs at tight end. They still have needs at wide receiver. They still have needs at edge. So we could be talking Cedric Tillman. We could be talking Tyler Scott. We could be talking Isaiah Foskey, the Green Bay Packers, they kind of have a threshold for their outside linebackers, and it's above 260. Foskey is 264, so he fits in there. But to me, Darnell Washington is just a Packer pick. You got Jordan Love. He's going to take over. You got your young wide receivers and Christian Watson, Romeo Doubs. Now you go ahead. You got Darnell Washington. It reminds me of just all those Bubba Franks, Jermichael Finley, just those big physical dudes that the Green Bay Packers have at tight end. And I think Darnell Washington fits that. So I'm going to take Darnell Washington for the Green Bay Packers. And then next, I am on the clock for the New England Patriots. They picked Peter Skoronski, offensive lineman, Northwestern. They still have needs at wide receiver. They still have needs at corner. And this is where your guy, everybody listening at home, Cedric Tillman, the wide receiver out of Tennessee, he is going to New England. All right. And that's where he is going to prosper. So the New England Patriots are finally going to hit on an early round wide receiver. So give me Cedric Tillman in New England. The Washington Commanders now are on the clock. Their first round selection was Anthony Richardson, the quarterback out of Florida, that was like a buzz moment during the draft when he fell that far, and the Commanders were able to get him because Commanders change ownership. You want to sell tickets, you draft a guy like Anthony Richardson going into your first year owning a franchise, like that is huge. If he hits, even bigger. Like what a lottery ticket you purchased there. So they still need offensive line help. They still need corner help. They still need tight end. And I wanted to go with the tight end, but I didn't know if they'd be into Laporta or Tucker Kraft. So ultimately, you took Anthony Richardson. Give me DeJuan Jones, offensive tackle at Ohio State. He's going to be a bookend. He's going to protect Anthony Richardson and I know Anthony Richardson's going to spend a lot of time out of the pocket, but when he is in the pocket, DeJuan Jones is going to have his back. All right, D, now, if you're still here, the Detroit Lions are on the clock. I took Lucas Finesse and Deontay Banks, who's my favorite corner in this class. I took them in the first round. They need tight end. They need interior offensive line. And this is a knee biter right here. All right. So this is a Detroit Lions special. So give me Cody Mauch, the offensive lineman out of North Dakota State. He'll find a place to play, center, guard, tackle, whatever. Wherever you need him, he'll go there. He'll bite some knees. So send Cody Mauch to the Detroit Lions. Pittsburgh Steelers are on the clock. They took Joey Porter Jr. and Jack Campbell. So they worked on that defense early in the draft. They still need offensive tackle. They still need safety. I don't think there's any safety really worth drafting this high. I'm going to take Anton Harrison, offensive tackle at Oklahoma. And there's a lot of like offensive tackles and offensive linemen available, it seems. It seems like there's a long run of tackles and guards and centers. It's lasting deep into the second round. So next, Tampa Bay Buccaneers are on the clock. Their first round selection was Hendon Hooker, quarterback out of Tennessee. They need offensive line, defensive back. Their defensive backfield was kind of decimated last year, and it really showed and hurt the team. And I'm going to go with DJ Turner, the cornerback out of Michigan. He can play. I think he can play on the inside. I think he can play on the outside. He's sticky. He's scrappy. He's physical. He's aggressive. And I think he's the type of guy you could throw in and play day one. Miami Dolphins, did they get a first-round selection? Nope. They got in trouble. They got it taken away from them. They need tight end. They need offensive tackle. The offensive tackle run kind of happened already, and I think it's ultimately there's no one available. So I'm going to go with Tucker Kraft, the tight end out of South Dakota State. I was thinking between Sam Laporta and Tucker Kraft, but I think that Tucker Kraft, he's one of those guys, he could do everything. He could catch the ball, he could block, and I know they're kind of more of a flashy offense, but I think Tucker Kraft fits, and it's kind of ironic because Sam Laporta went to Iowa, so you think maybe McDaniels might want to go in that direction but I think Tucker Kraft fits more in that mold. He can block a little bit better than Sam Laporta. I think Sam Laporta is the type of guy who will be better off if he gets drafted to a team that already has an alpha tight end, and he can kind of be that second option and be that passing option. Because I don't think there's a guy who's better after the catch, a tight end who's better after the catch than Sam Laporta. I just think Tucker Kraft is better all around. All right, the Seattle Seahawks. I was wrong. Will McDonald was not taken earlier. I went up to check just to make sure because that is where I have the Seattle Seahawks going. Seattle Seahawks took Jalen Carter and John Michael Schmitz and Jalen Hyatt. So they already had 3 selections. Now they still need edge, and they're taking Will McDonald, the edge out of Iowa State. And I love the Seattle Seahawks draft so far, which pushes me to the Chicago Bears. They took Broderick Jones in the first round, the offensive tackle out of Georgia. They need defensive linemen. They need corner. I am going out of Tamiwa, out of Baware, the defensive tackle out of Northwestern. That's another guy who his RAS score was through the roof. He's a freak. I think he can play some outside. I think he can play some inside. Chicago Bears got better with that selection. The Los Angeles Chargers are on the clock. Let me see some of these comments in here. Dewan is a wild prospect, King Cash says. If that dude hit his ceiling. Rich Gonzalez loves the Tillman. He said he's big targets, catches the ball with his hands, and he hopes Portis falls to Las Vegas, and as in Laporta. All right, Detroit Lions. Oh, I'm sorry. The Los Angeles Chargers are on the clock. They took Jordan Addison, the wide receiver out of USC in the first round. They need edge. They need tight end. They need safety. They need corner. That's why I'm going to give them Tyreek Stevenson. He's kind of a cornerback safety hybrid out of the University of Miami. I think he'll fit in very well in that defensive backfield. He can play some outside. He can play some safety. He's kind of like a chess piece, which they already have with Derwin James. I don't think he's on the level of a Derwin James, but he's somebody you can move around, and they'll have some flexibility with him. Detroit Lions are on the clock again. Lucas Finesse, Deontay Banks, Cody Mauk. They kind of went all over the world here with these selections. I'm going with Tyler Scott. I've heard Tyler Scott. It might sound lazy because his first name is Tyler, but I've heard him compared to Tyler Lockett. Tyler Scott was a running back in high school who's just recently transitioned to wide receiver. He's also a track star, like an athlete. He can track the ball down. He can run after the catch. I know they got Amon-Ra St. Brown, but you can use weapons. So I'm comfortable with them bringing in Tyler Scott. This is a luxury pick, but this is a freak indoors in Detroit. Points. It just sounds like points. The Jacksonville Jaguars are on the clock. Their first round selection was Cam Smith, the corner out of South Carolina. They need pass rush. They need tight end. They need offensive line. This one hurt me because I want this guy to the Dallas Cowboys. It's Sam Laporta, the tight end out of Iowa. I think that their head coach, Doug Marrone, he's had Doug Marrone. I don't even know if that's his name. I'm having a brain fart. But the head coach who used to coach the Philadelphia Eagles. I apologize. Someone in the comments tell me now because it's after 9 o'clock, so sometimes my brain stops working. But they had Zach Ertz, all right, and they had Dallas Goedert, and he made it work with those two. And now they have Evan Ingram, and I don't think Evan Ingram is as talented as a Zach Ertz, but I think the ceiling's there. And then you bring in a Sam Laporta, so I think what they could have down there in Jacksonville, kind of similar to what he had when he was in Philadelphia. And then also Evan Ingram, I think, is only on a 1-year deal. So Laporta, ultimately, he's a pass catching tight end. He could step in, take over for Evan Ingram after Evan Ingram moves on. Now it's going to kill me. I got to look up the Philadelphia Eagles Jacksonville Jaguars head coach because I'm going to drive myself crazy until I know it for sure. Doug Peterson. I said Doug Marrone. I don't even know who Doug Marrone is. But Doug Peterson is the coach. And yes, he likes that 2 tight end system. The New York Giants are on the clock. They went Maisie Smith, defensive line. In the first round, they still need center. There's a center available. It's Luke Whippler, center out of Ohio State. He's a dude. He's a day 1 starter. And they got better in the trenches too. So 2 New York teams in this draft both got better in the trenches. The Dallas Cowboys are on the clock. They took Drew Sanders in the first round. They need tight end. I think the tight end kind of has been wiped clean. They need offensive guard. They could use a running back. They could use a corner. I'm going with Matthew Bergeron out of Syracuse, who's kind of somebody I haven't heard much about until a little later in the process. He's a tackle who can also play guard, and I think he'll fit in. He'll probably play that left guard spot right next to Tyler Smith, hopefully for at least a decade. So Matthew Bergeron out of Syracuse. The Buffalo Bills are on the clock. Their first round selection was Osiris Torrance, the offensive guard out of Buffalo. I'm giving them Jonathan Mingo, wide receiver out of Ole Miss. There's a lot of buzz about Stephon Diggs. Is he going to stay? Is he going to go? Ultimately, I think he's going to stay, but he needs some help. Jonathan Mingo can play on the outside. I was seeing him mocked in like the 4th or 5th round. And then the buzz is legitimate. He is climbing, he is climbing, he is climbing. And the people that I'm hearing saying he's climbing are people that I respect. And I could see him going to the Buffalo Bills at the end of the second round. Cincinnati Bengals, their first round selection was Dalton Kincaid. I'm going to give them Jahmyr Gibbs. All right. I don't know what's going on with Joe Mixon, but I think Jahmyr Gibbs is a freak. He's a big time athlete, and it'd be exciting to see him out there in Cincinnati. Chicago Bears are on the clock. Their first round selection was Broderick Jones. They need a corner. They need an edge. They need a defensive tackle. I was thinking maybe Javon Dexter, Derek Hall, Isaiah Foskey, Clark Phillips, Darius Rush. Ultimately, I went with Clark Phillips III, the cornerback out of Utah. I think he's a little undersized. All right. And that might be a worrisome, but at this point in the draft in the second round, you're going with traits. He's physical, he's aggressive. Some of my favorite film from this year's class was watching Clark Phillips go up against Jordan Addison. So he's played some big time wide receivers. You can put him in the slot. You can get some work done, and maybe he'll remind some Chicago Bears fans of a guy like Peanut Tillman because he's always around the football. You just got to develop that peanut punch. The Philadelphia Eagles are on the clock. Their first round selection was Devon Witherspoon and Miles Murphy. Their team needs safety, linebacker, running back, and I'm going with Zach Charbonnet, an all-around guy who can do a little bit of everything. They were probably hoping Jahmyr Gibbs kept falling a little bit, but he didn't. I was also considering Devin Achane, Tajay Spears, but ultimately I think Zach Charbonnet is more well-rounded back, and I'm going to pick him in Philadelphia. The last selection of the second round of the on-the-clock two-round mock, because we completed the first round over the last 3 episodes, and we are completing the second round this evening. It's the Kansas City Chiefs. They took Josh Downs in the first round, and I'm going with Julius Brents, the corner out of Kansas State. I don't think he's a top 5 cornerback prospect in this class, but I would say he might have top 5 ceiling of the corners in this class due to his size, his wingspan, his athletic traits, his sticky coverage. What he needs to work on are all things that I think can be coached up. It's mostly at the end of the route, how he adjusts from covering the receiver to making a play on the football. I think when he learns, the eye discipline and his keys to key the receiver's eyes, to key the receiver's hands, once he starts developing those things, I think we're going to see him become a more better, well-rounded player. And the fact that the Kansas City Chiefs were able to get Josh Downs in the first and Julius Brents in the second for a Super Bowl champ, that is absolutely unfair. So that wraps up the second round. Again, this was On the Clock, episode number 15. The first round, we broke up into 3 episodes, so go check that out. Make sure you subscribe to Toilets to Titles. Make sure you subscribe to CFB Nation. If you want to mock with us, we're doing a mock draft challenge with the fellas over at Draft and the ladies over at draftcountdown.com. Go check out the Toilets to Titles pinned tweet. All the rules and how to join it. It's free. You just have to be subscribed to Draft Countdown. You have to be subscribed to Toilets to Titles. There's a link you click where you can enter your mock, and it shows you where to submit it. For every 10 people who enter, we're going to put $20 in a pot. Again, it's free for you, up to $500. Whoever gets in first place wins the full pot. You also need to get into our Gilded chat. So there's just a few things you need to sign up for, but it's all free. And once you get in the Gilded chat, that's where we do tons of stuff in there anyway. We do sleeper mocks. We do NFL draft mocks. We do rookie mocks. So just basically brings you into our community, gives you a chance to win some money. If you want to support the show any other way, patreon.com/Toilets to Titles. Check out toiletstotitles.com. All of our player profiles, our big board, our rankings. We just put our tight end rankings up there. And man, stay tuned. We appreciate you. This draft is approaching. It's been months of digging and diving and grinding and watching film and debating and arguing and talking players up. And I think this is going to happen. I think that's going to happen. And now next Thursday, guess what? All of our thoughts and debates, all that means nothing because NFL GMs and NFL teams are going to show us what they truly think and what they really believe. And we're going to have to catch up. And then we play the game where we see, ooh, I like that landing spot, or, oh, I don't like that landing spot. And that game is always fun to play. So everybody, man, I really appreciate you. Make sure you hit the subscribe button. Good luck. Enjoy the NFL draft. Toilets of Titles, we're going to have a live stream Thursday night. So that will be a lot of fun. So make sure you are tuned into that. And